Hey everybody, it's Zach. Today we are going through the purchase and sale agreement. So not everybody's most favorite topic because it's just so many legal terms and everything else, but we're going to do a deep dive today into the contract so you know exactly how to fill it out and how to understand different parts of it and contingencies and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so I am in Dotloop right now. If you don't know how to log into Dotloop, if you're having any troubles, there are more training videos on Dotloop. So please reach out or look on Thinkific. That's where all our training courses are. That's where I upload all these videos. Thinkific. If you need the sign up for our course, let me know. So purchase and sale agreement. This is used for any purchase of a property that has 1 to 4 units. So a single family home, duplex, triplex, quadruplex, anything 1 to 4 units, you use this agreement. Land is something different, contract or commercial is a different contract. So let's go through this. And I'll kind of go line by line on important items, and then I might just breeze over a couple other sections. But with this contract, the most important things to remember is as a realtor, we are glorified blank fillers. And that's the best way I can put it. So we are not to edit these contracts by crossing out sections or practicing law or writing really like law terms like here unto and just complicated stuff like that. Basically, just fill in the blanks. That is what our job is. And then also, obviously, do not provide legal advice to your clients because you are not a lawyer. So that again falls under that don't practice law. So let's get into this contract. I'm going to go to line 3, your buyer. Make sure to put all the buyers that are taking title to the property, put every buyer on this line. Full names, full legal names. If you have to refer to a driver's license or passport, that is what name should go on here. You can put a middle initial, that's even better, but middle initial is not required. So just remember full legal names. Let's see. Okay, so next line again, this is all the sellers. Every seller that's on title, they go here. So if there's 2 different sellers on title, they go here. If there's 3, if there's 4, put every seller on this line. Tract of land, line 6, you'll put the address, city, zip code, county. Now, a lot of people leave this section blank because they don't know where to find it. So the deed book and page numbers, if you go to RealTracs and you go search, and this is the MLS. If you go to RealTracs, down here, if you hit tax data, it will open up what is called CRS. And then you can search for whatever property that you are looking for the deed book and page number. So I just picked a random one here. I don't even know these owners. I just picked a random house. If you scroll down on the right-hand side over here, you can see book page document number. Here's where that information is found. So you'll take that info and you put it here, book page. Now line 9 and 10. So that would be, you would put the legal description or the tax ID number. You can put either or on line 9. So again, where can you get the tax ID number or the legal description? It would be back at our CRS tax data. So as you can see right here, parcel ID, tax ID number. Right here, you just copy and paste this into the contract. If you need a legal description, that's towards the bottom. And that'll be down here. So copy this, and then add this at the end. So it'd be a 3-part copy and paste for your legal description. If you put the tax ID, I would go ahead and write in here, tax ID number, and then I would paste where that tax ID number is. You at least need to fill in line 9. Line 10, I would say could be more optional. It's good practice to fill in as many blanks as you can on the contract. So you could put the legal description here, or I've seen some realtors put the MLS number here. They put MLS number and then whatever the number is. That's okay. The MLS number can go on 10 only. It can't go on 9. So just remember that. All right. Next section, what's included with the property. So pro tip, when you go on a listing appointment, and I actually go through this section with the sellers, with the homeowners. I want them to know, and I want them to know exactly what is included when they sell their home. So sometimes I've run into, as you can see, shutters, blinds, shades, curtains are included in the sale by default. So maybe they have grandma's curtains up or something sentimental. If they want that, I would recommend, and maybe even before pictures, take that item down, and that way there's no confusion. Nobody's going to ask for those items later on. They're not even know they were in the home. So take down, coach your sellers, but have them take down anything that they don't want included or buyers to see and potentially want included in the sale. Let's see, there is a blank here. So a lot of people forget this. This is for garage door remotes. So put something here. Um, as you'll see in here, it does say all built-in kitchen appliances. One appliance you will not see in here is a fridge. So it's kind of 50-50 if people take their fridge, if they leave the fridge. So a lot of times you'll see fridge written here, sometimes washer and dryer, above ground pool. So this is where if the buyers want anything extra, it goes in lines 23 and 24. Now, a quick correction is some people put all appliances. Now, do not do this. The reason for this is, let's say you say all appliances. Well, does that include the washer and dryer? Does that include the fridge? So it's not specified. So you could definitely get in legal trouble if the seller, let's say, takes the fridge and claims, well, it was never in the home and it's not specified in the contract. So it's important, list everything detailed, what is staying with the home. So don't just put all appliances, don't just put kitchen appliances, list exactly oven, microwave, fridge, dishwasher, whatever is included, list that specifically. So we'll just put oven, microwave, fridge. Items that will not remain with the property. So again, remember, we are not lawyers, we do not practice law. So we cannot come up here to section 12 through 20 and start crossing out items. If you fill in something in this blank, it will override what's in section 12 through 21. So for example, I can say, let's just pick something here. We can say TV wall mounts. So as you can see, that's in here. If we put that here, that means the wall mounts are not included. So use this section to override anything that is not included, or if you want to make a special point to a seller to take something and make sure they don't leave it behind, put it here. So again, like above ground pool, maybe you've negotiated and the buyers don't want a shed, something like that. So put those items there. All right, let's go. Leased items. If there's anything leased, always ask the sellers, do the buyers want that item? So it could be security system, water softener systems, or you check here that the buyer does not want to assume any leased items. So just make sure. Purchase price. So the price that the buyers are willing to pay would go here. So we'll say 350,000. And dot loop will automatically pre-fill the next line for you. Financial contingency. So if your buyer is getting a loan to buy the property, let's say they are 20%, they're going to put 20% down their conventional loan. They're putting 20% down. So that means they need to qualify for 80% financing. So you would put whatever the total loan percentage of the purchase price is here, not their down payment, but what they need. So 80% in this example. Okay, and I wrote in my notes too that, let's see, ability to obtain as herein means that buyers qualified to receive the loan described herein based upon lender's customary and standard underwriting criteria. In consideration of buyer having acted in good faith and in accordance with the terms below. So buyer acting in good faith. So that means they are asking for financial contingency in this contract. They're saying this contract is contingent upon me being able to get a loan. If I can't, I can cancel this contract and get my earnest money back. But if the buyer goes out and, let's say, buys a new Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and all of a sudden they don't qualify for this loan, that's not acting in good faith, and they can't cancel the contract because they went and bought a Lamborghini and messed up their financing. So just remember, buyers acting in good faith. Let's see. And then again, so if the buyer cannot get qualified for their loan, the seller has the right to request any supporting documentation regarding the loan denial. And then if the buyer is entitled to a refund, they get it back. Here you will check which type of loan they are getting. So in our example, it's conventional. Make sure you check one of these boxes. Okay, and let me clear up lines 59 through 62. So buyer may apply for a loan with different terms and conditions and also close the transaction provided all other terms and conditions of this agreement are fulfilled. So that is saying if the buyer has applied for a loan with the initial lender and they are denied, it does not mean the buyer has to go and apply with a new lender. This is just saying the buyer has the option to do that if they want, and they can try and get a loan and still close on the same closing date. So again, buyer is not required if they get denied by the first lender to go out and find a new lender and a new loan. So just want to clear that up. And then forewarning, if a buyer does get denied and they want to go out and try to get approved by a different lender, line 60, buyer shall be obligated to close this transaction if buyer has the ability to obtain a loan with terms as described herein and or any other loan for which buyer has applied and been approved. So if they apply for a new loan and they get approved, but they change their mind, that doesn't matter. Okay, so make sure you read this contract line by line. There's a lot of important information in here. Just checking my notes real quick. Okay, so lines 63 through 84, loan obligations. So if your buyer is getting a loan, you need to understand the different timelines and deadlines within this contract. So definitely read this, but here's some of the big points. Line 64, within 3 days after the binding agreement date, buyer shall make application for the loan and shall pay for the credit report. Buyer shall immediately notify seller having applied for the loan and provide the lender's name, contact info, and they've ordered the lender to get the credit report. So within 3 days, they have to make the application for the loan and pay for the credit report. And also number 2, within 14 days, the buyer shall warrant and represent to seller via the notification form that buyer has secured evidence of hazard insurance and they've notified lender of the intent to proceed, and they have requested an appraisal be ordered and the appraisal fee has been paid. So there's a lot in there, but if you represent the buyer, you need to be on top of them with all these deadlines because you don't want them to miss a deadline and they lose out on the house. Let's see. Line 75, buyer shall pursue qualification for and approval of the loan diligently and in good faith. There it is again, good faith. Buyer shall continually and immediately provide requested documentation to lender. Now, line 77 is very important. Buyer represents that this loan is not contingent upon the lease or sale of any other real property, and the same shall not be used as basis for loan denial. So, if a buyer has a home to sell and they're offering on this home, if they get denied their loan because they can't qualify for two mortgages, that does not mean they qualify for the financial contingency. They won't get their earnest money back because of a home that they haven't sold yet. So, very important. Read this line over and over and over. Again, 6 relates to acting in good faith. Buyer shall not intentionally make any material changes in buyer's financial condition. Let's see. And again, should buyer fail to timely comply with 2.1a or 2A2 and provide notice as required, sellers shall make written demand for compliance via the notification form or equivalent written notice. If buyer does not furnish seller the requested documentation within 2 days after the demand for compliance, buyer shall be considered in default and seller's obligation to sell is terminated. So if your buyer is not meeting these deadlines, the seller can let you know via written notification, hey, you have not met these deadlines. And then if you don't correct them within 2 days, the seller can terminate this agreement. So again, know the deadlines in this contract. It's fun stuff, isn't it? Let's see. All right, so line 85, if your buyer is paying all cash or does not need financing, you would check this box. So again, either they're getting financing and you would put the percentage and then what type of loan, or you would check this box. And then if that's the case, buyer will furnish proof of available funds to close in the following manner. So I would just put, how are they going to show that they can pay for this house? So just put bank statement. Make sure this is filled out if you check this box. And again, read what happens. Buyer must order the appraisal and provide seller with the name and telephone number of the appraisal company and proof that appraisal was ordered within 5 days of the binding agreement date. So if you're getting financing, you have 14 days. But if you're not getting financing, you only have 5 days. So the time frame switches up there. Again, if the buyer doesn't meet that requirement, meet that deadline, the seller can say, hey, you haven't ordered the appraisal, you have 2 days to demand for compliance, and then seller can cancel if it's not corrected within those 2 days. Appraisal. So here you can say this agreement is not contingent upon the appraised value, or this agreement is contingent upon the appraised value either equaling or exceeding the agreed upon purchase price. If the appraised value is equal to or exceeds purchase price, this contingency is satisfied. So just a kind of common courtesy for buyer's agents, if the home has appraised for the purchase price or higher, just let the seller's agent know so that way they can comfort the seller. There's a lot going on. There's a lot on the seller's mind. It's just common courtesy to let them know, hey, the property did pass appraisal. It's not required, but it's just good practice and keeping good communication. Let's see. And then on the flip side of that, if the property does not appraise, the seller can request to see documentation to prove that it did not appraise. So just know that. And if the home does not appraise, you have to promptly notify the seller, right here on line 106, you have to promptly notify the seller, and the buyer shall then have 3 days. Once the buyer lets the seller know, hey, the home did not appraise, the buyer can do one of two options within the next 3 days. They can either waive this contingency and say, I'm good with it, I'll move forward with the contract, or they can terminate this agreement by giving notice to the seller via the notification form or equivalent. Let's see. Okay, important deadlines too with this contract. So let's say the home does not appraise. The buyer notifies the seller, hey, the home has not appraised. You have 3 days to let them know, hey, option 1 or option 2. If you wait till day 4, then that means you have assumed the house as it, like, the appraisal contingency doesn't matter anymore. So if you get to day 4, the buyer cannot then go back and say, oh yeah, I want to cancel the contract because the appraisal came in low. No, you don't get this contingency anymore. So make sure you're within your time frame. And then also, let's say you get to day 4, beyond your 3 days to either pick option 1 or option 2. Let's say you get to day 4 and the home never appraised. Well, now you cannot, if the lender denies the loan because the home did not appraise, that does not qualify for financial contingency. And that's covered right here. In the event buyer fails to either waive the appraisal contingency or terminate the agreement as set forth above, this contingency shall be deemed satisfied. Thereafter, failure to appraise shall not be used as the basis for loan denial or termination of this contract. So stay within your 3 days, let the seller know. Otherwise, they're going to have to move forward with the property. All right, moving on to closing expenses. So you can read through lines 117 through 125. This is what the seller will pay at closing. Lines 132 through 140, that's what the buyer is going to pay. Line 143, you will want to put who is paying for the cost of title search, mortgagee's policy, and owner's policy. Now, in a hot market like this, I'm seeing a lot of buyers paying for this. This is a negotiable point. So the sellers or the buyers need to go here because somebody's paying for this and you need to determine who. So this is negotiable. The next blank. So if anything above, if that party, so say a seller expense, they don't want to pay one of these and the buyer's going to pay for that, you would put that down here because that will override up here in the contract. Closing agency for buyer and contact information, closing agency for seller and contact information. So I am used to parties closing at the same title company. However, here in Tennessee, you actually see a lot of the time the buyer closes at one title company, the seller closes at a different title company. You can close at the same title company, and that might actually save your client a little bit of money. It's not much. Sometimes it's like $100, $150 they save. So you can definitely think of that as an option. However, I would advise that it would be best to have your own title company for your client. That way they have their best interest. It's not, sometimes when you get with the other party's title company as well, they've worked with them a while, they're biased towards that other party. So you definitely want somebody that represents your best interests. So you put that here. Earnest money. So buyer has paid or will pay within, typically you see 3 days here or 5 days is typically the average. But again, this is negotiable. So this is up for the sellers and buyers to determine what's acceptable. Name of the holder. So this would be the title company from above that is going to hold the earnest money for you. Our company, Zach Taylor Real Estate, we do not hold earnest money. So make sure you put the title company here. And if it's the buyer, it'll be the buyer's title company that's going to hold the earnest money. So put that there, then put the address, make sure to fill that in. The amount of earnest money. Typically, again, this is just typical before this crazy hot market. I used to see a lot of like 1% of the purchase price here. So if it's a $300,000 home, I would see a lot of buyers offering $3,000 as earnest money deposit. So this is money that the buyers are putting at risk because if they default in the contract, they could lose their earnest money deposit. And then sellers in a hot market, if you put more than a typical amount, that could make your offer even stronger. So instead of $3,000, if you put $10,000 as earnest money or $20,000, $30,000. So this is a negotiation point as well, but you put that amount here and then it says by check, or if it's a different amount or a different payment method, put that here. Again, if you don't meet deadlines in this contract. So if the holder does not receive the earnest money within the time frame you set up here, they will notify both parties, and then the buyer shall have 1 day to deliver the earnest money in immediate available funds to the holder. If not, the sellers or the buyer's in default. So very important to know, follow your deadlines, make your earnest money deposit. It is okay. You as the agent, if let's say the buyers are working 1 day and they ask you to go run their earnest money deposit to the title company. If you feel comfortable handling the check and running it to the title company, driving it over there, then that is okay. But just make sure you're comfortable with that, because if you lose it, or if it's a cashier's check and you lose it and the buyers are out that money, you're going to be liable. So it is okay for you to drive it to a title company. Once you're there at the title company, get a receipt from the title company confirming that you've made the deposit. Get a receipt, because that will protect you legally, and it shows proof that you've made the deposit, and you'll need proof of earnest money deposit anyways for your dot loop and for compliance. Let's see. Okay, lines 167 through 183. This kind of covers what I talked about earlier up here with choosing either the same title company or different title companies. And again, this just reiterates why it is a good idea to probably do a separate title company, because here's ways that your earnest money can be released back to your client if you're the buyer's agent. So upon a written agreement signed by all parties, or upon a reasonable interpretation of the agreement. So again, if you have your own title company that you've worked with in the past, that you know and trust and have a good relationship with, they're going to be more, they're going to have your back better. So I've dealt with, we've all closed at the seller's title company, issues come up where we need to cancel a contract, and that title company has leaned towards the seller side, because again, they can release it upon a reasonable interpretation of this agreement. So just think about that when you're choosing title companies. Closing date. So here you put the closing date. Let's say the 10th day of December 2021. So fill in all the blanks. And notice here, it says, or on such earlier date as agreed to by the parties in writing. So you can close earlier than the date you put here. It just has to be in writing that everybody's okay with that. Possession. So does the buyer want to take full possession of the property at closing, or agreed and attached incorporate temporary occupancy agreement? So if the buyer wants to take title, have keys, move in after they close, you check this first one. Sometimes the sellers need more time to find a new place, or sometimes the buyers move in before they close on the house. Then you would look at checking this box instead. So make sure to check one of these. Greenbelt, if this applies, you would check one or the other. If the property is not greenbelt, then you would just skip over this. This is one of the few blanks that you can skip. Special assessments. So if there's a special assessment approved or levied prior to the closing date, it shall be paid by the seller at or prior to closing. So special assessments, just a refresher, a lot of times you see them in like an HOA or condo complex where maybe the condo complex has to replace all the roofs. So they issue every homeowner like $1,000 special assessment to help them cover the cost of all those roofs. So this is saying that the seller is responsible for that prior to the closing date, if they've been approved or levied prior to. You can read this, read association fees. Let me check my notes. Title and conveyance. This is just saying the seller at the time of closing will convey a good and marketable title to property. So that means there's not going to be any liens or anything else outstanding like that. If there is any liens or anything else where you don't have a free and marketable title, then the seller can either, or the buyer can either accept the property with the defects or require the seller to fix those issues prior to the closing date. And if they can't do it by the closing date, the buyer can walk away. Deed, this is going to be the full name of everybody going on the deed. So this is going to be your buyers. So all the buyers that are going on the deed, their full legal names need to go here. Again, associations, if there's any assessments or any fees, seller shall cause to be delivered to buyer or buyer's closing agent not later than 7 days before closing a lien payoff, a estoppel letter, or statement of account reflecting that the account relating to the property is current. Lead-based paint, please check one of these. If the home was built prior to 1978, you do need a lead-based paint disclosure. It is required by law. You also need to send the person buying the property the lead-based paint pamphlet, and that is already preloaded into every purchasing loop in .loop. So let's say prior to, and again, it's prior to 1978. If it's 1978, if the home was built in exactly 1978, you don't need this. Okay, almost done. Inspections. Okay, buyer's right to make inspections. This I'm going to go a little bit line by line because it's very important, and I don't want you guys to get in legal trouble or your buyers misunderstand anything. So buyer's right to make inspections. All inspections, including but not limited to the home inspection report, those required recommended in the home inspection report, wood destroying insect infestation inspection report, septic inspection, and well water test are to be made at buyer's expense. So basically that's just saying any inspections, it's the buyer's expense. They have to pay for it unless otherwise stated in this agreement. The parties hereto agree that in the event buyer shall elect to contract with a third-party inspector to obtain a home inspection, said inspection shall be conducted by a licensed home inspector. So they can't have a random friend or a buddy that's not licensed. If they want a home inspection, it needs to be by a licensed professional. However, nothing in this section shall preclude buyer from conducting any inspections on his or own behalf. So a buyer can do his own inspections. Important to note. Let's see. Seller shall cause all utility services and any pool, spa, similar items to be operational, so buyer may complete all inspections. So seller has to have all the electrical working, the lights turned on, the water's running, everything like that. So don't turn off your utilities before the inspection. Buyer agrees to indemnify seller from any acts of himself, his inspectors or representatives. So if the buyer chooses to inspect the home by himself, he falls off the roof, he's not going to sue the seller. And of course, if there's negligence or something else, something besides that, then the buyer agrees to indemnify the seller. Okay, most important thing of the inspections. Buyer waives any objections to matters of purely cosmetic nature. So decorative, color, or finished items. So the buyer can't be, during his inspection period, say, you know what, I don't like the paint color on the wall. I'm going to cancel contract. No, that does not qualify. Or, oh, I don't like that there's carpet in this bedroom. That does not count. Initial inspections, buyer and or his representatives shall have the right and responsibility to enter the property during normal business hours. So please just keep that in mind. Sellers do have families, they have pets, so don't ask for inspections at 8 o'clock at night, 7:30 at night, normal business hours. Buyer and or his inspectors, representatives shall have the right to perform a visual analysis of the condition of the property, any reasonable, accessible installed components, the operation of the property systems, any controls, heating systems, cooling systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems. So basically this is saying anything that an inspector can visually inspect or systems that he can get to, that is what will be inspected. This inspection contingency does not mean a buyer can start drilling holes in walls, breaking stuff, damaging stuff to get to other items. So this is a visual inspection or systems that the inspector can access. So just important to remember, if your buyer shows up on inspection day with a hammer, please be concerned. Wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. If desired by buyer or required by buyer's lender, it shall be buyer's responsibility to obtain at buyer's expense a wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. So you're going to see these a lot with VA loans, but any loan, always consult with your lender. Hey, should my buyer get a wood insect infestation inspection report? So always ask your lender, should they get this report? They typically probably between 75 to 150 bucks is what this costs. Regular inspection, that can cost several $100s. I've seen them as low as 350. I've seen them as high as $700 for a full inspection. This inspection, which is talking about the wood destroying inspection, shall include dwelling, garage, and other permanent structure on the property, excluding. So if there's anything that's excluded from this report, put it here. Usually none or NA. For evidence of active infestation, okay, very important too. Buyer shall cause such report to be delivered to seller simultaneously with any repairs requested by the buyer or the end of the inspection period, whichever is earlier. This, when I first started real estate, I did not have this sentence in my contract. I was selling a house. The buyers came back and said, hey, we want all these items fixed. And we said, okay. And then 2 days later, they said, oh yeah, we also want you to lower the purchase price because of all these termites in the house. So kind of they dinged us one after another. So this is saying you have to notify the seller at the same time, hey, we want these items repaired, and there's also termites in the house. Same time, you have to notify the seller. If the wood destroying report indicates evidence of active infestation, seller agrees to treat infestation at seller's expense and provide documentation of the treatment to buyers prior to closing. Okay, so here's where you say how many days you want to do your inspections. So typically I've seen 10 to 15 days is typically what I see. Some buyers writing, they want their offer to be more attractive to the seller, so they'll lower this and put like 5 days. So give yourself some timing. Let's see. Yeah, you'll have all your inspections done within that 10-day period. And if you go beyond that 10 days and you've never contacted the seller with a list of repairs or anything, then this inspection contingency no longer applies. And now you continue moving forward with the contract. So you have to notify the seller within these 10 days. Line 296, within those 10 days, in consideration of buyer having conducted buyer's good faith inspections as provided for herein, the sufficiency of such consideration being hereby acknowledged, buyer shall furnish seller with a list of written specified objections and immediately terminate this agreement. So within this 10-day period, you have 3 options during this 10-day period. If you find things wrong with the home, you can either 1, you can terminate the agreement. 2, you can accept the property in as-is condition. Or 3, you can move to what's called the resolution period. So this means you've inspected the property, you want to go with option 3. I'm talking as if I'm the buyer. You've had the inspections, you want items repaired. Well, now you will give this list of requested repairs to the seller within that 10-day time frame that we put up here. Let's go ahead and read this. Furnish seller a written list of items which buyer requires to be repaired or replaced with like quality or value in a professional and workmanlike manner. Funny story for you. I was helping buyers purchase a house. The little attic fold down ladder that happens. The buyers wanted that fixed. The sellers agreed to it. And this is what the agent did to fix the ladder. Here's what they did. They stuck these metal, whatever they are, and they used a little metal wire and tied it and said, there you go, the ladder's fixed. And as you can see here, you can't even bend the ladder or anything like that. And it was a joke. So again, if they agree to any repairs, it has to be in a professional and workmanlike manner. Via the repair replacement proposal or equivalent written notice, seller shall have the right to request any supporting documentation that substantiates any item listed. So you choose option 3 as the buyer. You have to give the seller notice via the repair replacement proposal or equivalent. Hey, here's the things that I want fixed. Resolution period. Seller and buyer shall have a period of. Now, again, this determines based on what you're asking to be repaired. If you're asking for, let's say, just a light switch, you could maybe put a couple days in here for the seller to fix it. Or you can put longer days. If it's going to be big items, they need to get quotes for everything before they agree to fix stuff. So just think about that for your timing, how many days you want to settle on what repairs are going to be done by the seller. So just think about that. Seller and buyer shall have a period of 10 days following receipt of the above stated written list resolution period to reach a mutual agreement as to the items to be repaired or replaced with like quality or value by seller, which shall be evidenced by the repair replacement addendum. The receipt by seller of the above stated written list or repair proposal marks the end of the inspection period and beginning of the resolution period. The parties agree to negotiate repairs in good faith. If both parties during this resolution period can't come to an agreement on which repairs the seller is going to do, then this contract is canceled. So just think about that. Again, pro tip, if you're asking for, hey, I want the whole AC system replaced, put a couple more days during the resolution period. That way the sellers can get quotes and they can see how much it's going to cost before they actually agree to take this on. So just think about that. If you don't want any inspection contingency, you click here. Number 8. So this is related to this section of inspections, but it is different. So final inspection. This is also talking about your walkthrough. Even if you waive your inspections, you still want a final inspection / walkthrough. So I would say, you could say 2 days, you could say 3 days prior to closing, only to confirm property is in the same or better condition as it was on the binding agreement date. So even if you're not requesting any repairs, even if you've waived your inspection, it's still a good idea to have a final walkthrough. Make sure the home is in the same condition as when they first went on their showing. Make sure the seller hasn't taken any items that don't belong to them, taken stuff that's bolted on, or fixtures or appliances that are included. So put days in here, do a final walkthrough. Additional due diligence, so the buyers can get a flood certification, water disposal, they can get it tested. So read through this. Disclaimer, this is just saying we're not licensed lawyers, so don't think we're lawyers, or we're not licensed inspectors, so don't rely on us for inspection advice. So read through this, very important. Brokerage, this is just saying the seller agrees to pay the listing agent. Default, if anybody defaults, referred to this section right here. Even if you default, so let's say, should buyer default here under the earnest money shall be forfeited as damages to seller and shall be applied as a credit against seller's damages. Seller may elect to sue for additional damages or specific performance. So just because you default and you lose your earnest money, just know the other party can still come after you. So it's very important to do everything in good faith, stay in good communication, follow the timelines in your contract. Home protection plan, check if they want a home protection plan or not. This is talking about binding agreement date. Read through this. Survival clause, time is of the essence, terminology, very important. So, all your deadlines, people ask, is it 5 p.m. that it ends or 10 days or midnight that it ends? So let's say you have 10 days to inspect the property. Well, on that 10th day, does it end at 5 p.m. or midnight? Well, right here, the term days used throughout this agreement shall be deemed to be calendar days ending at 11:59 p.m. local time, unless otherwise specified in this agreement. Local time shall be determined by the location of the property. So it's going to be Central Time here in Tennessee. In the event of a performance deadline, other than the closing date, date of possession, completion of repair deadline, and offer expiration date, if it occurs on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, the performance deadline shall extend to the next following business day. So that's a really good thing to know about your deadlines. So for example, let's say you get a binding agreement contract on a Wednesday and you write 3 days to deposit your earnest money. Well, that would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But because it's a weekend, it would extend to Monday of the following week. So it'd give your client a couple extra days to make their deposit. So just think about that with your terms. Look at a calendar when you're making an offer, check for any holidays and stuff like that. It says everybody will cooperate. Notices. So throughout this whole time, I've been talking about the notification form. Except as otherwise provided herein, all notices and demands required or permitted hereunder shall be in writing and delivered either in person, by prepaid overnight delivery service, fax, post office, posted prepaid, or email. So when you're giving notice, let's say you're notifying the listing agent and the seller that the buyer has paid for their appraisal and ordered it. Don't send a text. A text does not count as written notice. I've talked to a lawyer about this. So email, the notification form, or any of these other forms of notice in writing. So a text does not count. So don't text important items or notifications to the other parties. Use email, use the notification form. Very important. Let's see. So any addenda here? So earlier when it asked for lead-based paint, that's a common one. You can add that here. Any other addenda that you want to attach, you would talk about it here so that way people know to look for it and it's part of the contract if you add it here. Special stipulations. So again, if you want to override anything in the contract, here is where you would do it in special stipulations. I also added several clauses, very common clauses that people use. And if you start typing it out, it will actually input it in here. So for example, so I was going to type buyer, contingent on the sale of property. This agreement is contingent upon the sale and closing of the property located at blank, buyer's property, on or before the closing of this agreement. So I've added a lot of clauses that people add in here. So you can start typing them if you need them. Time limit. This offer may be withdrawn at any time before acceptance with notice. Offer terminates if not countered or accepted by, and you would put a time here. So 5:00 p.m. on the, what day is it? 8th. So we'll say the 10th of July, 2021. Pro tip here. So if your buyers make an offer to sellers, and let's say they make the offer, then they go out and see another property that they like better, the buyers can pull their offer because if they haven't heard from the seller, they can go ahead and pull their offer and then submit on a new house. So that's just something to know. This offer may be withdrawn at any time before acceptance. Also, vice versa for the sellers. If you're the listing agent and a buyer submits a really good offer, it's important to note if the sellers don't make their mind up quick enough, the buyer at any point could pull their offer and the deal's off the table. So just think about that with your timing. Also, with contracts and offers, I know this is a crazy market. Typically, I've seen people allow about 2 days to decide on an offer. Sometimes in this market, people are putting a day. But really though, if you're submitting offers and the sellers are working, it's noon on a Monday, and the buyers want an answer within an hour. Think about your time frames of how much time you're going to give the seller to think about it. Because a lot of times they're busy, they're working. So just think about that. Be courteous. Wire fraud. This is the most missed initial for agents. So make sure the buyers initial this before you submit this contract to me for compliance. Buyer sign. And then the seller can say they accept, counter, reject. They can sign. Acknowledgement of receipt. So they hereby acknowledge receipt of the final accepted offer on, and this shall be referred to as the binding agreement date for purposes of establishing performance deadlines as set forth in this agreement. So again, the binding agreement starts when everybody has fully signed this contract and both sides have a copy. That's when the timer starts for the binding agreement date. that makes it day 0. So make sure I always, when I have a fully executed contract and I now have a binding agreement date, I confirm it in writing. So usually I'll send it over to the other side and I'll say, hey, I just wanted to confirm today's date. I'll list the date is the binding agreement date. And I will have the other agent email me back to say, yes, that is the date. And fill out this section as well. So that way you have 2 forms to prove, hey, here's the binding agreement date. That way everybody knows the timelines and there's no discrepancies later on. Just check my notes. So I covered that. Um, 432, notice. So notice shall be deemed to have been given as of the date and time it is actually received. Receipt of notice by the real estate licensee or broker assisting a party as a client or customer shall be deemed to be notice to that party for all purposes under this agreement. So just because you send a repair proposal or whatever else, it's when notice shall be deemed to have been given as of the date is actually received. So if an agent doesn't check their email for a day or 2, you need to be following up with them and confirming that they've received any important documents. It's very important. Don't let anything slip through the cracks. Follow up, get in writing that the other agent has received whatever document you need them to handle. I think that is it. So that's most important things with the contract. I know it's not the most fun topic. I know it gets a little dry, and I apologize about that. The biggest things to remember is just you are a blank filler. We are not lawyers. Use the contract blanks. Fill in as many as you can, or any of them that I talked about that are required. Filling in more blanks will help protect you better legally. So just remember that. If you have any questions, always reach out to me. There's also a free legal hotline by the state of Tennessee. Our E&O firm policy also has free legal help. So you have a lot of resources. I hope this helped you out. I hope this makes you a contract master now. So I will see you next time. Thank you.